Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another pumpkin emoji with myself, Jeff Koval. Tonight, obviously, Rod is here as always, creator of Monarchs 52. Tonight's
Hello.
guest, we have Evan Santiago, the creator of Stan Frederick and a pillar of the Slenderverse lore and community.
Hello.
So,
How you doing?
Good. How you guys doing?
I think what I was just complaining about in the pre-lobby, I think it might have just happened to Evan. I also assumed we were live right then before Rod says, "All right, give us the countdown. We're going live." But that's okay. We're still getting used to this.
I'm the only one who has any idea what's happening around here.
Yeah, no, we're locked in the insane asylum with
I mean,
they're running the show.
to be
Hell
fair,
yeah.
Jeff, we were talking about Palpatine breakdancing before we started.
I
So,
just wanted to know if it's possible to learn this power, and
not
you
from a
guys gave
Jedi.
me their input. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, Evan, I know just recently you finished I think it's the end of Stan's story, correct?
Yeah. I just finished the third season, I guess you can call it, the 59th episode. I wanted to stop before episode 60. There were some reasons for that, but yeah, I finished it completely, and it's kind of odd because I've been working on it since 2016. And before that, if you want to count any earlier stuff that I did that I decided to scrap and start over with in 2016. So
Sure. Yeah, no, it's funny because when you say like it, quote unquote started in 2016, it's like I knew this guy for years, so that wasn't that recent, but like you said, production
right.
changed, things like how you were developing the story and presenting it changed. So
Yeah,
I always thought that
2012 was when I met all of you guys. So
yeah.
like it's very odd and almost um it's cathartic. I mean, to be able to start over and then also to get the ending that you wanted. I think that was something that I didn't think would ever happen. And then as the story was changing, even after 2016, like, the story changed a couple times between seasons. And that's the I guess the great thing about doing a season based thing. You get to kind of readjust and see what works, what you've done so far, and what doesn't.
You think like as you're making it to give yourself that, kind of like landmarks to get to, like checkpoints, you think that the season structure really helps with that?
Yeah, no, I definitely do because I'm more of a thematic storyteller. I guess that's like the way I like to do my stories. Is I like to ask myself, like, what is the season about? What are these like ultimately, like, what am I trying to say? And then at the end of each season, my goal might shift. Like, I have a very different idea of how a certain theme worked in season one versus the end of season three, which is why I ended up doing like what I did.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, just hearing it laid out like that, I could, I'm envious of that, when we were working on our project, that we couldn't maintain that kind of structure. And I think that weighs on the audience as well as the creator to not have, with these types of stories, whether you call them ARGs or web series, it is kind of hard to keep up interest if you suddenly disappear for a year. There's another,
I
fun
mean,
question for sorry, Rod, for Stan Frederick, as like, do you think you consider it a web series, or do you think it did toe the line into the whole ARG world?
Well, I actually think it has very little ARG stuff in it. Like
Mm-hmm.
I originally I wanted it to be an ARG, and I think that's because everything was an ARG, and I was like, I want to make interactive elements. I want to like do like some really fun stuff,
Definitely.
and interact with the audience. And then I figured not too far into the development that the most I liked from the ARG stuff, from the interactive stuff, was just like having a Twitter account and like having like some kind of side thing for it, like where the character could interact with people outside without like I knew what story I wanted to tell. I didn't want the story to be changeable by the audience. So I would call it more of a web series.
No,
right.
that's admirable. You knew what you wanted to do with it.
And you did it.
Rod, you were gonna say something?
No,
Talked over you.
it's okay. It's fine. I know you don't care about me. See,
Not in front of the viewers.
Shut up. So the thing that does rise to mind is, especially with stories that are, and I don't want to say interactive in the case of Stan Frederick, especially since because of this, breakdown you just provided of like this is the story you wanted to tell, and so you told it.
Yeah, it wasn't really malleable from the outside.
Right. What I would say is that question. Oh, Jeff and Evan are a little bit quiet. Okay, increase the should be better.
Oh,
Yeah, no, and thank you for that input, audience,
Yeah.
because as we
Yeah,
mentioned,
thank
as
you.
I
Thank you.
mentioned before, I mumble, and I think Evan and I are sort of on the same wavelength of speaking lower.
definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I'm bombastic internet funny man, so I have to talk loud.
He's also eating his microphone, but
Shut up. Not in front of the viewers. So the thing that does come to mind is the question of like, think about any moment in your life. Think about the moments where you had a lesson to learn or something like that. Can you truly assign a theme to something that you lived over like a year, maybe two, maybe three? Can you assign a consistent theme to that?
Yeah. And that's that. I think that's one of the reasons why I like found it so difficult to give Stan Frederick one overarching theme, because my idea of what made that theme like a good theme changed.
Exactly. So the question that I would pose, especially for, and I think this goes for both of you, and I guess for myself as well, but something that should be interesting to consider is, and you were talking about this, Evan, how it's not about the descriptive theme of something. It's about the theme that is ascribed to it. It's this idea that the events in our life are not pre-planned so that the theme makes sense. We give those events a theme, and how does that theme evolving? How does that serve the story, right? How can we serve the story by having these themes shift?
well, I think in terms of choosing a theme, if you're going to do that, that's like our jobs as a creator of something, as a writer. Like life is just chaos, but you can if you're not in the middle of it, take a step back and say, all right, this is what I took from events XYZ. This is what I took from it. So I think if you're like conscientious about it and mindful of it, that like that's what you choose the theme of. I don't think it's impossible to take a like, well, I don't know what kind of example you were talking about, but like anything like chaotic in your life, and you can choose to describe define it by what kind of theme. What are you going to take from this? Because it could just be chaos, or it could be a learning moment, a growing moment.
Yeah, I think that I think one of the most well, and like I was saying, I'm more of a thematically focused person, and I'm actually way less of a story focused person. I don't care too much about the structure of a story, and I'm not too concerned with the structure of like of a world. I don't care too much about like the story at hand. I don't care about the literal. The literal to me when I'm working is a means to get a theme out there, like to get an idea out there. Is it always effective as literal storytelling? Not always. It's trial and error. I think that there's like a lot of leg room to make those kinds of mistakes, to make mistakes where you can where you poorly address a theme. And I think I've made those mistakes along the way with Stan Frederick, but enough time that you get to work on your themes, like you eventually get something you wanted, which is what I got with season 3, which is the exact ending I wanted, the exact theme that I wanted. And now I consider seasons 1 and 2's main themes to be mistakes, but happy mistakes that I was able to make it to a point that I felt comfortable.
Right.
I was going to say, I think that really lends itself towards more as like, your eye as a filmmaker, rather than, necessarily like we started talking ARGs, web series, blah, blah, blah. I think that's a very, like, not literal. It doesn't have to be a short film or a movie, but that is very much an admirable filmmaking trait. And I think you like in conversations we've had outside of this broadcast, it's hard because sometimes projects like that leave people who are just dropping in confused. They're like, well, what happened? And it's like,
Right.
it's not so much like you said, like the what happened. The little story told is just a vehicle for this like feeling you were trying to carry on. And for some people, they just don't tune into that immediately, or until subsequent viewings, or some people just don't do that, period. And it's
because it might not be the reason why somebody started watching something of yours. Like I know people that started watching my series because they like a certain character, or they like how a certain Slenderman encounter was done, and that isn't the reason why I make this stuff. Like that ended up, that's just like we've been saying, it's the vehicle. Like it's just what we're using to get to the point that we want to get to. So I completely get it when people say that, let's say season 3 was the weakest season, or season 2 was the weakest, or just Stan Frederick is not their favorite series, or is their least favorite series. Like I think the point is just, to me, that I'm okay with that, because I know that what I wanted to get out of making this was not the same thing that they went in looking for.
Sure, yeah, no, all your cards are on the table at the end of it. Like your painting is done.
Yep. I finished. I said what I wanted to say.
So, just to see this mess going on in the background, what game is this, Rob?
This is Project Zomboid, and I have a few mods in that make it so that the entire world is fucked. It starts off with like it starts off like in the beginning of like a zombie movie where everything goes wrong. There's like a bunch of people with guns running around and they're all trying to survive. I had a wife, but I said goodbye to her. She's in that house over there. I got a gun on me, and people are just shooting each other all over the place. I'm just trying to run away.
Jesus in the middle of the road there?
Hold on. I need to make sure that you are able to see. I need to fucking...
Yeah, no, okay. I always have the stream up as well, but I realized we didn't give Evan his access to the stream in the Discord call.
There we go. So Evan, for the people that are not super familiar with Stan Frederick, could you give them like a short explanation of like, is Stan Frederick, like the most like simple explanation you can give?
Almost like the elevator pitch.
Yes,
sure,
exactly.
Yeah. Slenderman, paranormal investigator, doesn't care that Slenderman exists. That's it.
Oh, there you go.
It's just a guy that's walking around. It's just a guy that's walking around the previously established Slenderman world that we all know about, and is very clearly just doesn't care about what's going on, and is just trying to help people that have other problems with Slenderman, because whatever the Slenderman's effect is on people, it doesn't affect him, and that's how it all starts.
Right. Okay.
And then there's a whole world to be explored from there.
Oh yeah, there's a lot goes down, and it becomes really convoluted and stuff, which is, I think, one of the reasons why, again, season 2, I think, is something that I kind of felt weird about after I finished it. Not that I did dislike it by any means, but as I shifted, like, there was something about season 2 that I didn't that didn't land as well. And then season 3, I had to work with that convolutedness, and I ended up doing something I really liked with it. So I have season 2 to thank for that. It's very strange how those things tend to I guess reposition themselves, I guess.
Yeah, you can just roll with something that it wasn't your ideal choice, but it ended up working out.
Oh shit! Right. I got shot and I didn't realize. Sorry.
Who has guns?
Everybody.
This game looks like the street view of The Sims, like the first Sims.
Yeah. I was gonna say, it looks like Age of Empires and Sims in like 1998.
Jesus. No, I got a lodged bullet in my torso. I need to find some fucking, like... Wait, oh god, that's a lot of zombies.
Oh
no, shit. I need to find some like stuff to heal myself with. and it's like a full medical system. I have to like pull the bullet out and suture it. It's like
I like that you can just walk around at the end of the world at a brisk pace.
well, I can't
There's
run
no
because
running.
I can't run because I'm like hurting. Oh shit. But
Tis but a flesh wound. And
Evan, I want to ask, like, the thing about Stan Frederick that a lot of people, one of the things that people talk the most about, oh god, is that it crosses over with a lot of other IP. And,
Hell yeah.
Something that a lot of people love about this world or universe that we have is that there is a possibility of crossing over with other stuff. How do you approach, the compromises that have to be made in order for, a crossover to function?
I think that Jeff being here is the perfect like the perfect thing because it's the perfect example of this. So generally, let me talk about generally first. So when it comes to crossovers, I'm very particular with how I go about doing them a lot of the time, but I'm usually very open to do them. I had to unfortunately cancel a couple that I was going to do when the third season was first starting, because I actually did have a couple lined up that I was going to do that weren't part of my main story, but were part of, whoever I was crossing over with's main story. I wanted to make sure that I basically lent Stan out to a bunch of people before season 3 started. And then my hard drive thing happened, and I figured, all right, I think it's time to just let the crossovers go. But to answer your question, actually, I think that the compromises on my end were really up to... God, that's... well, you know what? I would definitely want to use the EMH crossover as a good springboard to talk about this.
Yeah, no, go for it. I mean, that's why I'm here, kind of.
Hell yeah. I mean, yeah, we met up, God, I don't even know when this was, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago.
Probably a little longer, because we were still coming towards the end. And actually, after the show, I'll tweet that goofy picture of you and I in Vin's basement for posterity.
Oh, wonderful. Well, what's it called? That day, you guys were still planning. I think you guys were planning the finale that same day that we were from your series. The same day I came to discuss the crossover with you guys. And so the original crossover had Habit in it. EMH's Habit. It had Habit in it, and it was supposed to be meaning like my original plan for it, like the first draft that I had written for it, was supposed to be this kind of back and forth between my character Stan and Habit. And I was really, really dead set on a lot of things that I wanted to come out of that scene. And when I finally sat with you guys and talked about it, it was mostly me and Evan talking, because Evan has a very specific approach to doing Habit, which I thought was dope. And it ended up being a really tough conversation, because it was like Evan has me and Evan both had very particular ways that we wanted to go about doing this, and I don't know if we necessarily had come to an agreement by the end of it. So the rewrite I ended up doing didn't involve Habit, because I didn't want to sacrifice a whole lot for that. So I don't know if that answers your question at all, but...
No, I mean, I think it kind of highlights the process that Rod was kind of like the broad process he was probably asking about.
Right.
I think ideally, and you kind of... What I was going to answer is kind of exactly what you explained. When you have two separate entities, like, it's one thing if it was like when we lived with, like our boy Dylan, like we have two people in the same house working on similar projects. It's kind of easier, I think, to know where the other is mentally, in the story, and how far along the story is, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
But when you're either two friends who don't live together, or two completely separate creative groups, it's harder to know, what's going to fly or not. So I think if you're trying to approach a crossover type event in a creative way, you have your grocery list of everything you want, like your dream list. You acknowledge it's probably not going to come out perfectly.
Right.
I think at that point, you have your series and your character. We had our series, and Evan, like you said, very much knows his character. And it's just that, like, at that point in time, and I think at that point in the series, it was just unfortunate that the grocery lists, they didn't align in some ways, So we had to say, all right, well, then what could work? And, I think, honestly, if it was when we did live with Dylan, or a couple of years earlier in the project, the ideas that we discussed, they were always fun. I don't think there was ever any bad ideas, but I think it just didn't work at that that stage of our characters and our story. But so I think you have to prepare what you definitely want, but be prepared for the other person to not necessarily be able to do to accommodate that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then it ended up working out what we did, like, in its place too. I actually ended up liking the subtlety of doing what we ended up doing a lot more than like a really, really like outward habit appearance, because it ended up being this kind of jab, like a fun jab at the fans, where it's like, oh, you guys wanted a habit to enter, because who doesn't want to see more habit, like in terms of fan stuff. But it ended up being my character asking Vin, like, oh, is Habit around? And then he wasn't. He was just out. Like, he just wasn't home. And I thought that ended up being really funny.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing too. I think I first said it on our stream, Rod, last time, but I've said it for years, to my creative friends and just in general. We are online carnies. I think like that's kind of like the biggest setup. It's like, oh my god, Stan's gonna meet this big bad, and it's like, oh no, he's out shopping. Like, oh, okay, well then I guess I'll talk to this bearded guy for a little bit. Oh, I can't help him either. All right, I guess I'm gonna fuck off. Good luck, man. Like,
yeah, that ended up being a lot funnier. I think that scene, and it plays into what my series ended up being labeled as a lot. Like, I think my series got labeled pretty early on as a parody, like a parody Slenderman series, and it's not a parody, but it's one of the more self-aware series, so it automatically becomes a parody to, I guess, a lot of people, which is fine, but that like the jokes end up getting really like worked into it, so that whenever a joke happens, it kind of adds to it, and it makes it so that, oh, this could actually be kind of light and kind of fun, and that's what Stan ended up being a lot of the time, when it wasn't really dark and really heavy. Right. Like, it ended up being really light.
A lot of people talk about this idea of realism being like there is no comedy in the world, but then you remember, like, people in the trenches in World War I were making jokes. So if people can make jokes there, jokes are going to happen everywhere.
Yeah, I think it's also, and it's kind of funny saying this out loud, because your whole thing in the beginning was the story doesn't necessarily matter to you, but what I was just as the Slenderman stories as a whole, it's kind of like what can we do? Is he a dead character? Is like all the concepts have been done. And it's like, well, if you take that kind of statement at its face value, it's like, well, then, all right, what you have maybe, this is completely, off the cuff. 4 types of Slenderman stories. 1, that somebody's infected and kills himself because he goes crazy. 1, a cult gets involved and they kill people because they're crazy. 3, the end of the world happens. 4, they beat Slenderman. Your story, It's like, fuck the story. If you're complaining about there being, everything has been done before, then let's just observe and explore what this poor character is going to be going through. It's like, if you say you only have a handful of like formulas that you can use this character for, then you're really going to have to do something just interesting, I think, to make it different. And I think that's what you did with your with how things ended, how you use crossovers. And that's actually leads me to another point, but I'll let you respond if you have anything to say about that.
That does make me think of one thing, and it's something that I kind of go to more recently when I'm talking about the whole like, oh, is Slenderman dead? Is that like a concept that's like done? The thing that I constantly go to is like every theme in the entire world has been tackled already. Everybody
Yes.
has already made a story that's about one particular thing. Do we not try and tell that story from different perspectives, and do we not try to continue to make those themes known? That becomes my question, because it's like I have my own idea about what EMH is about, and if I'm right, then that theme has been done a bunch of different times in a bunch of different ways, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that this is just your take on this theme.
No, I wholeheartedly agree with that.
So I don't know. I think it just becomes like a matter of like, why would we deprive ourselves of a specific story or a specific idea when there's so many different ways to go about telling that? That's what it's like. That's the similarities of being human, right? Like that's the parts of being similar that are worth exploring. Otherwise, like, what are we doing?
Yeah, no, I completely, and that's something. I mean, you're my friend, and there's things we're going to disagree on, like in terms of media and stuff. But that's something I always agreed on and admired of you. Like all the people, not all the people, but people who, at this stage in the game, just complain about the genre, and it's like, well, then, what are we doing here? If there's no more, if the Slenderman character is dead, all right, then move on with it. Let the people who are using it still, enjoy it. Like people are going to be finding it for the first time now.
Something I never understood. Yeah, I understand the sort of,
like, people can be tired of it if they've been here for 10 years. I get that. Totally understand that.
Sure, but at the same time,
clearly something works.
Go for it.
There's clearly something working for newcomers, at least, if like people are willing to stay and new people are willing to come to at least try something. That's what I've always thought. Like, if people are here to try stuff, then that works for me. Like it, and then that's all I personally need to get out of this, and that's all I've gotten out of it. And that is, more people willing to engage with the material on its own terms. And I talk about that all the time. Like, it's Slenderman. There's no rules. There's no rules to the character. The character is literally a blank slate. That's the joke.
I mean, it has no face. It's literally a blank slate.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
It's funny though, because I don't even know if it's funny. It's kind of off-putting sometimes, honestly. But it's like, something is still attractive about this character, that we are getting, follow requests and comments from children that I don't even think were born when we started this series. So like somehow right now, elementary and middle school kids are just getting on the internet and, seeing this boogeyman. And I don't know. I think that's it's funny to me, because it's like the exact opposite of all these. Again, I sound very bitter about it because I think of specific people who are complaining, but I know there's people who just say it as as an actual criticism. But there's people who are completely dismissing the character now because they've known it for a decade, not realizing that maybe he is the internet boogeyman now. Like if kids are growing up knowing and seeking out this kind of media, for better or worse, that's lasting power.
I think so.
If we really look at it, like, Jeff, you call yourself like a grumpy internet boomer. If we really look at it, the people that are not into Slenderman like anymore, which is not a problem, like what you say, it's people around our age and older, people that have been here for a very long time and have been dealing with this character for a long time. But then again, the question is not whether or not the character is good, it's what has been done with it lately. And I honestly believe there's always a way to reinvent the character. I'm probably going to die here. But the reinvention of the character and the genre itself is the most exciting thing there is. Like, it's taking something that's known and remixing it. For better or for worse, doesn't matter how good it ends up being, I'm definitely going to die.
You can probably find a tweet of mine out there that, like, and this was already at like 4 or 5 years ago, that someone's like, Slenderman is dead. What are your ideas of reinvigorating it? It's like, well, my series is still going at this point, so fuck you, buddy. But people asking like, what
tell me how you really feel about my work.
Yeah, no, exactly. But them asking, and I joked, I'm like, honestly, it's just going to keep existing as it is now. With smaller teams coming up with ideas and running with it. But I said, if you really wanted to make it mainstream again, you're gonna have to get some like billionaire's kid who grew up watching these stories on the internet and now has nothing but fuck you money and spare time to just drop it. And then this is where the monkey's paw twitches one finger. I'm like, exactly. Or a big studio could come in and do a movie, and like literally like the next week I saw the commercial for the Sony Slenderman movie, and I was like, oh no, what did I bring upon this world?
It was so bad.
It's very not good. No,
I would absolutely recommend watching it if you want to have a couple laughs.
Yeah, it is hilarious.
Credit for that.
It is
also,
hilarious.
You want to suffer for a little bit, because there is some pretty intense suffering to be had while watching that one too. Because I recall it being a chore to get through, but it definitely is fun.
It's an experience. It's a movie-going experience.
It's fun. But Rose Ravager says it on the chat. I wanted it to be good so badly, right? And yeah. I think that's I don't want to say the correct thing to want, but I think that's such a good thing to want for this character. When I look at Slenderman today, there's always a part of me that goes like, Slenderman funny. Like it's like, yeah, it's been a while.
You're so familiar with it.
Yeah,
it's like if I see Freddy Krueger, I'm like, oh fuck yeah, Robert Englund. I'm not afraid of him, like
exactly.
As a kid, I see Freddy Krueger, I'm like, oh fuck, I need to sleep with my nightlight on now.
Same. But the thing is, right? Like, I wonder if what we feel with Slenderman today, and I don't wonder, I think it's absolutely the case. I think that's what happened when people started seeing, like, oh, Friday the 13th, Part 5, Friday the 13th, X, Jason Takes Manhattan, like that kind of thing. Jason X.
Jason X is one of the best Jason movies, so I'm not really
it's absolutely hilarious, but we didn't grow up. We didn't grow up at that time. So it's all I can think of is like my dad talking about Friday the 13th, and he's like, God, the third one was already way too much. And I'm like, the third was one of the best ones. It's so much fun. What are you talking about, old man?
Jason Takes Manhattan is the best movie I've ever seen. We were in stitches. They were on a fucking tugboat for like 3/4 of the movie.
Yes.
I when a movie from a series that's been going on for too long does that thing where it like hints at really good thematic depth, like for like a second, or good character depth, and then they're just like, actually, we're just kidding, this sucks. Because that's exactly what Jason Takes Manhattan was. They had like this whole character thing where her past was tied into Jason's actual existence on the lake, and how her trauma.
Oh my God, you're totally right.
There's this really great little like tie back to like between them, and they have like a relationship almost. And then the movie's just like, oh, actually, that doesn't really matter. Look, he's in the city now, and the movie's over.
And then look at him, he's beating up homeless people. All right, Jason, you do.
That was. Yeah,
thanks, Jason. Very cool. But I think there's something to be said about the whole idea behind, like, I don't want to say nostalgia. I think it's like the opposite of nostalgia. The negative.
Like, I think familiarity.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said. Like, I just heard from Mike Weisner that apparently somebody, and I don't want to say some kids, because that sounds like I'm dismissing what they're making, but some people are making what they believe, and this appears to be their words, the next big thing in the Slenderverse.
I mean, all right.
I wish them luck.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same people that made the whole like bad ARG thing, and it's like,
oh, okay. So they're coming out the gate swinging with this one.
Yeah, they're swinging hard and at every direction. So it's like,
Yeah, and that's my thing. When I hear that, my initial reaction is hell yeah. Where can I find it? You know,
yeah,
because I'm less concerned with the I'm less concerned with the quality of the project and more concerned with like, oh, what are they doing? Like, what's going to come out of this, and can I see it, and what's it going to be about ultimately? Because if it's not, if even if a theme wasn't intended, there might be something that comes out of it that they may not even have anticipated. Because I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this. It's kind of a tangent, but there's a TikTok series. Um, a horror TikTok series. I'm not even sure if it's horror, but it's these it's these TikToks about this person that goes down into a basement and kicks some cinder blocks, and that's the whole series. Every episode is just a person unlocking the door of their basement, walking downstairs, and kicking a cinder block, and then the video ends. And there's slight variations to each video where sometimes there'll be only one cinder block in the basement, or the person will be wearing different clothes, like obviously because it's supposed to be every day, and there's another room that they don't want to go into for some reason, and a lot of the tension comes from that. So a lot of the thematic depth and a lot of like the depth that comes from it is just about like, where are you going with this? And so that's what I usually think about going into stuff that like people saying they want to make the next Slenderman thing, like say, like I'm like, oh, okay, so what's your secret room in the basement of the cinderblock house? You know, like what's your secret room? What am I gonna get out of it? What's gonna come out of this? I guess is what comes to mind anyway when I go into this stuff.
right,
Yeah,
the whole
it's like
suspense of it is the fun of it.
like
fun
the
part
how-to
is, like,
basic of TikTok. But
Right.
like,
what
with,
was the
like,
was it Alan Tutorial, the name of that one?
Yeah, Alan Storm was
yeah,
great.
like
Yeah, it was
it's like
very
that, but like
similar to
the implicit, no, not the implicit, the implication of like something is wrong here. It's not like some of the how-to basic videos were just funny, but it's like watching that with like a ringing in your ears.
Right. I mean, there's this
Yeah.
whole there's this whole thing that I forgot who said. Oh, it was John Carpenter. John Carpenter was talking about this. He said the secret to horror is literally you standing in front of a child with something in your hand, and you don't show it to them, and you say, "Oh, this is very scary, and I'm gonna show it to you eventually, but not now. But oh my God, this is so scary." And I'm like, holy shit.
It's great.
Well, that's that leads to a good question for everybody. Are you I mean, I guess not considering our past work because it's already out there, but are you a show the monster kind of horror fan?
I personally, I have this. I had this discussion with Mike a little while ago, and I was watching The Tunnel, and it's one of my favorite horror movies. Alien being my favorite, not just horror movie, but favorite movie of all time. There's this moment in The Tunnel where you can kind of see the monster, and you get the silhouette, and you can kind of imagine what it looks like. But at the same time, there was this unnerving thing that, after writing horror, I'm sure both of you have felt this. After writing horror for so long, you kind of become desensitized to horror. Like, it's harder to scare you, it's harder to, like, really get you with a horror movie. Because you love them so much, and it's like, oh, yeah, like, I get the tropes, I understand, like, how certain things work. But The Tunnel really fucking gets me every time I watch it, because it has this concept of a monster that I don't think a lot of other things do. It's this bestial, malice. You know what I mean? It's this like primitive, malicious, beastly nature. You know what I mean?
Sounds freaky.
Yeah, in The Tunnel, not to spoil the entire movie, but the monster of this movie is very much like, they're very animalistic, but they can talk. And when they do talk, you can tell that they're relishing on the fact that these people are absolutely terrified, and that they are going to kill them very slowly. It's this relishing on the pain and the horror of the victims. And that shit for me is like oh, that's some of that gourmet shit. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
the absolute perfect thing. And even if they do show the monster, which Alien does, like it shows the xenomorph very plainly in some moments, it's like if the monster is well made, and even knowing what monster it is, you can't really do anything about it. I think that's successful horror, in my opinion.
And see, and that goes into it being about like, and that goes into it being literal, right? Like what's in front of the camera and what's actually happening in the story, which is cool. And it just goes to show like the way that I would approach this question is that I would approach it saying like, you know, the thing I find about show the monster movies is that it's fine and it's effective as long as the monster means something. You know, like if you're going to show the monster or not show the monster is not the question to me. The question to me is what does the monster mean and what's scary about that? You know,
That's
like
fair.
there's certain things about a monster that if, you know, you show it and it doesn't mean anything, there's nothing really like to be afraid of. Pennywise is a great example in any single It, you know, in any version of the story of It, you know, Pennywise means something very specific and he means something very, very obvious. And the reason why I find him scary and I think that he's effective is because what he means matters so much to the people that he's affecting, you know, and I think that's an important thing to look at. With
really
Friday
does.
the 13th, if we're talking about Jason Voorhees and what he means, you know, him being abstinence, him being a metaphor for abstinence for the first like 3 or 4 movies. I don't know how long he represented abstinence for, but it definitely stopped after a point. But but him meaning that meant that you were nervous for people that engaged in any sort of vice of any kind in the movie, because that's what the movie represented. It was about youth being this evil thing and the brave Jason coming to snuff it out. And it was this awful it was this awful perverse thing, and it was the thing that used to make me scared for the teenagers. I was like, do not engage in sexual activity, don't you understand? And then
Premarital sex.
Exactly.
What if I want to have sex before I get married? Well, I guess you just have to be prepared to die.
Yeah.
And that's the entire.
Want to make an omelet?
And that's the entire thing of it.
I think no, and I was gonna say Pennywise. That hits the nail on the head for you, huh? With the whole symbolism and using the monster effectively.
Yeah, no, sure.
I think just in my experience in what the movies and stuff we've seen, it's like I think when some directors or not even directors, just creators as a whole, when they're not confident in what their monster looks like, I think having to show it, they have to rely on other loud effects, and it's no longer a horror movie. It always turns to action, and that's not a bad thing. But I think the more you show the monster, it's like the more like stretch you got to get with your dollar for it, I guess. If they're like, well, if we're showing this effect, we might as well go all out. I think that really changes the whatever story is being told. I'm more so keep this thing hidden.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think
sense,
yeah, on the when it comes to the actual production stuff, there could be like so many reasons to make sure that you hide or don't hide a monster, and then who knows what that ends up turning into once the film comes out. Like it's so strange. The production stuff often just doesn't get seen as a factor, when meanwhile it can be like a whole reason why a movie has the aesthetic that it has. Like, oh, our budget was this, or our what we had at our disposal was that, and it's never really taken into consideration. Whereas somebody will watch a movie, they'll be like, oh, the themes are this and the idea is this because look at how this is shot and look at how this comes around, and meanwhile it wasn't intended at all, which makes for like a way more interesting project. I think something that you can interpret based off of like what someone had at their disposal.
I think even on a technical level, it's like sometimes if it's just not looking good, or on what kind of design of a character it is, it's like we were just joking about the Sony Slenderman movie. If they cut 5 seconds in certain places and blurred the lens in another, I would have had a vastly different overall opinion, positive opinion on the movie. So it's like literally sometimes not showing certain things I think works to the overall impact of everything. Just because, I am a sucker for bad effects, but really bad effects do kind of like, well, that was cheesy.
Yeah.
I mean, what we look at today as like bad effects, it's like
that's true. I already see where you're going with this, and yeah, I agree. I do agree that. Yeah,
I don't know. There's a charm to it, there's a charm to it, but at the same time, it's like how I don't know if I'm Evan. You seem to understand where I'm going with this. Like, pick up the torch.
No, there's definitely a charm to older effects that are not great by like modern standards, that aren't like. I mean, there's stuff. There's something about it that just feels like somebody made it. Which that's how I feel about like this kind of art generally. Like I like to feel that it's made. I like to feel that it comes from somewhere, because that's the reason why I got into filmmaking. I didn't start liking movies because I thought Freddy Krueger was realistic. I got into making movies because I thought that it was ingenious how they did this and that, like on set, like technically speaking. And then my love for themes and stuff developed from there. So I think the important thing is that even if an effect is bad or gross or doesn't work, like does it work for young people? Is it something that young people see and get intrigued by and want to either emulate or make something of their own? And is there value in that? And my answer is yes. I think there's definitely value in it.
No, and don't get me wrong. I love, any movie that's just out there trying. Like, I love trauma movies, and they have some of the most obscene, are you serious effects out there. But I think I was more so just taking another pot shot at the Sony Slenderman movie, because certain like graphical uses and like, why are you using this kind of effect more so than the effect itself is, I think, really what gets to like what I'm talking about. It's like there's, especially when it's a highly funded project, I think the more money that went into it and the worse the effect is, that's the more critical I can be of it.
Yeah,
because it's no longer a ragtag, slap this together. I need to make my brother's arm come off in the scene. No, it's throw another $250,000 at it, see what happens. And it's like, it looks half-assed, even though you paid 10 years of my salary.
The big difference something with money and something without money is the money. So like, I agree with that completely.
Yeah, I think the thing for me is like, just like, God, how dare you not do something with passion when you have this amount of money and we don't? You know what I mean? Like, how dare you throw away the what we wish we could have?
Yeah, no, you get a little irritated by it. I get it.
I do. I get really pissed off with like, these movies have incredible potential and money, and it's like, how, like, did you not get a single person who loves this to make it? And even then,
I'm sorry I'm cutting you off. You guys probably know this, but I made that essay like a while ago talking about like the Slenderman movie generally and how it how it misses the mark and what it misses the mark on. And that essay was just a labor of love for like people that create stuff and how it was supposed to be this, and how the Slenderman movie was supposed to be this, hopefully this testament to what it means to be creative and what it means to like actually care about what you're making, and then it just wasn't, which is a shame. It's a shame to see a studio do something like that with something that's for 10 years been this like really, really community driven thing.
It's like going to high school with somebody who's like, they have a brilliant voice, and they go on American Idol, and it's like they're blowing everybody away, and then you finally get they're touring again, and they get the chance to come to your town, and they're like lip syncing the whole time. It's like, why are you doing this? Why is it being done this way? I know what you can do and what you have access to. And it's like, the show still might be brilliant, but how much better it could be.
Yeah, definitely. All this talk about the Slenderman stuff, I did mention to Rod earlier, but there is something that I wanted to kind of...
Oh, yeah. It's an announcement.
It's an announcement, yeah. Well,
oh yeah, no, that's why we invite our friends and creators on here. It's like, what's going on now? Go for it, man.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, it's not necessarily a project of mine. It's a thing that I started a few weeks ago that I want to kind of get out there for people that are, making stuff specifically Slenderman based, and I wanted to kind of, God, there's no way to put this except give Slenderman back to the people, so to speak. The idea for it was that I wanted to kind of get away from the big creators, the big creators version of the Slenderman that exists right now, and I created a YouTube channel that's supposed to be a place where people could just make Slenderman content and submit Slenderman content. It could be short films, it could be mini series. I would really try to keep it between those two things. And the only rule I have is that you got to be over the age of 18, like, to make something for it. Everything else is just make whatever you want. Follow all the rules of Slenderman that you know. Don't follow all the rules of Slenderman that you know. Whatever you want to do, you can make anything and submit it. I eventually want it to grow to a point where where it's going to be community run entirely, and that I don't have to run it anymore. Like, a bunch of people run it. A bunch of people have the account information. A bunch of people can, a bunch of people that have been involved with the Slenderman stuff for a long time can basically help with submissions and stuff. And that's where I basically want to go with it. I made one short film for it. I sent out a bunch of messages to friends, and I have a bunch of other people that are going to be making films for it. So, it's just going to be a place where people can make that stuff. So
crowdsource Slenderman.
Yeah, why not? It's completely not for profit. It's just a place for people to create, and that's all I need is for people to have a space to do that. And that's basically the point of it.
He does need your credit card numbers and the 3 numbers on the back, though, to get started. So please put that in.
Last 4 numbers
do
of
it.
your social. And
do
also
it
the
right
first
now.
No, dude, that sounds excellent. I think that really is a. I mean, who knows what's going the genre is going to be like in 10 years from now? But I think that really is a full circle. What made it exciting. To bring it back to that.
I really hope it has that effect in any way. I want to be able to, like, I love the big 5 or whatever we're calling the big series now, and I love all of the stuff that's come out of that. The big thing that I want, though, is for it to not always be what Slenderman is associated with. I want him to have, like, much more to go on and much more to I don't know, like, I want him to, I want there to be more for him and more for people to want to create with him, because if we have the same, it's like everybody always says, if we have the same 3 tropey things to do with Slenderman, then we're never going to be able to see what more people can do with him. So I'm encouraging people, do less Slenderman stuff with Slenderman. Like, if you don't want to do a series with distortion, don't use distortion. If you want to do a series with distortion, use it. If you want to give Slenderman a green tie, give him a goddamn green tie. That's fine. Do whatever you want to do with him. Exactly. Like, anything thematically or otherwise.
Rules are fake.
Well, give him a face.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
Give him a fucking face. Make him short. Make him fat.
Green screen my face onto his suit.
You're made of Nicolas Cage.
No, but that's excellent, and I think what we were talking about before, if kids are following us old geezers still, then there very much is there are going to be eyes for that kind of story, that kind of media. Like, there is an audience out there, whether or not it's being drowned out by people just complaining about Slenderman existing. So I think that's a good idea.
I actually did a short film for it that's very simple, and I'm gonna make it public tonight. And it basically just sums up my feelings on the use of the Slenderman, and it's supposed to. I'm hoping that it encourages people to, like, just make what they want, because this film is the farthest thing from what I think people would just assume you'd have to do with a Slenderman film. It's very
I think that's the first pumpkin emoji that we get something immediately before a release of something new. Usually everything's like, what's the next big thing you're working on? That's awesome. We'll have something tonight.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. It's been around for a while. I've mostly just been waiting for more friends to finish their projects, but I figure it's still October. I'd want for the month, if anybody had anything that they wanted to submit early, like to feel free. November, December. I mean, it doesn't have to just be October. Like if you guys want to put stuff out Slenderman related, whatever you guys want to make, just make it. That's why I'm here.
Yeah. The game just crashed. I went to sleep and I crashed. I think that means I'm dead. And you know what that means.
I mean, we're just about to hit the hour mark. I think that might be the sign once again.
Every time.
It's
Every
like,
fucking time.
Evan, I think this has been great, but I think we could we have a few end of the chat things that we like to do before we sign off, but I think we can start wrapping it up unless there's anything else pressing on your mind about storytelling or Slenderman Online as a whole.
No, I mean, the only thing I could think to say is what I've always been saying, which is, make stuff, make whatever you guys want to make, and see how it does with the public, but moreover, make it for yourself. That's all I got.
Yep.
Great words. I mean, I think we all agree with that. Absolutely. So taking that, sincere statement, we're going to completely, make it feel, oh shit, we're back. We're going to completely take all the air out of that. And you have to now, being a guest on Pumpkin Emoji, choose one of the viewers in the chat to be sacrificed to the pumpkin god for Halloween.
Yes. You have to kill them.
100%. JOAJE.
Do they have a Twitter handle?
Yes.
Okay, the fact that you were ready for that
I'm
makes
kind of
me
concerned.
so happy. You're the type of guest we need, but not the type of guest we deserve.
Bloodthirsty?
Yes.
That's excellent. Get it to me after. You don't have to worry about it in the chat. But
okay.
Let me just teleport them into my room so I can kill them.
What? See, Rod always does this bit, but then I post a classic horror movie death on Twitter, and that's where the real death happens. But let Rod have his audio gag.
That's a big ass knife. All right, there he is. Come over here, boy. Come over here.
You put a can of Pringles.
There he goes.
We heard like every other decibel of that, but I appreciate it nonetheless. So, Evan, thank you for joining us. Rod, thank you for getting this going once again.
Every time.
Thank you, viewers, for checking in and hanging out with us for this hour.
Yes.
Happy to do it. This was great. Seriously, thank you guys.
Evan, thank you so much. And stay tuned, because maybe later this month we might do an Among Us game with all the guests.
Yeah, no, we're gonna try to. I mean, that's definitely gonna be like trying to herd cats, but we will try our best.
Yep.
Hell yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you so much. You've ever so handsome and cool. Thank you so much for being here. And everybody, have a good night. Thank you so much for being here. We'll see you later.
Take care, guys. Talk soon.